Welcome back. Good to see you again, Amanda.
You too. You too.
Yeah.
I like the blue. Got the
Thank
blue
you.
on here and even the earphones.
Yeah. So one of the things I brought up was self-flagellation, which is something that we learn from religious upbringing.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of talked about it a little bit last time, where you talked about, loving your demons.
Yeah.
And you wrote a song recently. What is that song called?
Yeah. It's called Moving On.
Okay.
But yeah, it's definitely man, it's an intense one. It's like it just felt like such a gift that kind of got dropped. But it's just about like, just like what I said in that last podcast of like, when I heard Aubrey talking about like having, you can't exercise your demons, or quote unquote demons, of like sometimes people take that so literally in different spaces, but just like, the things or like what we look at as darkness inside of us, or like our past and all of our struggles, all of the things that have, that in some, religious settings would like literally call demons at like, or different entities, which is not that I don't think that those things don't exist, because I do on some level think that those things are real. But I mean, the things that are like, we're constantly trying to like work away, or like, I got to figure out how to like self-help myself enough to get rid of this particular demon in my life, but it's just, that only works so far, and like the only way through it is to love it. You got to you can't just kick it out of you. It's impossible. You have to turn around and figure out how to come to a place to love that shit within yourself. And that's the only way that you can, really grow. And then you find out that those things actually helped make you who you are. Like you wouldn't be who you are without them, so it's like the whole song concept is like the first verse starts off with, I want to shake hands with my demons and learn to dance without them. So it's like everyone's always talking about like, oh, dance with my demons or whatever, but it's just like I've been, and when it comes to sobriety, or which I'm like 56 days in again, so I'm just like kind of at a bare knuckle point right now. It's been much more challenging this time than the last couple times I've tried to do this, but at the same time, I have a lot more inspiration, and it comes from a deeper place this time. But even that, a quote unquote demon of addiction, I'm like definitely an addict in many areas of my life. So it's like I can't just snap my fingers and be like, exercise the addiction demon, you know what I mean? Like, and then it's just gone, and I like never struggle with that again. It's like, no, I gotta look at that dude and like literally with every amount of truth I can muster, say I love you to it. And then, and I was actually able to do that in the last, ceremony that I did, that ayahuasca plant medicine ceremony, for anyone who's unfamiliar. But it was really intense, but really beautiful. I literally was able to I was given the gift of actually visually seeing these things within myself, and like they took form with face, and in a space that a lot of people probably would have been very scared, or like what they would have thought was like the beginning of a very bad trip. But it was like I was able to understand what was happening, and I had already started to write that song, and I was like, oh my gosh, that like I'm getting the gift of actually seeing, and like this, what I was writing about is actually happening right now. And so it was like the greatest gift of being able to look at them, and then because I was having a hard time kind of getting into the vibe of it at the beginning of ceremony. And then sorry, I don't know if you heard that. My cat is going crazy in the background in the living room. But yeah, it was just this beautiful thing of before it started, I was trying to kind of get into the space, and I had taken the first cup of, you know, ayahuasca, and like immediately threw it up, you know, and I was like,
Oh,
and this was the second night. We had the first night of ceremony, which was its own beautiful thing, but was challenging. And then the second night, the first night it was like kind of focused on sobriety. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to drink all the cups and like go as, you know, far into whatever dimension we go to in that, you know, medicine space. I just kind of knew that I had to allow myself not to be seeking that feeling in that moment.
mm,
And then right before I started ceremony the second night, I made the promise of, you know, this of sobriety for a year at least, because that's all my brain could kind of comprehend. I've done this a few times, and I just don't ever give myself a timeline. And then it's like the concept of being sober forever is just like, no, in my mind. So I'm trying to learn the balance of finding the beauty and just like never wanting any of those things again. But we'll see what happens with that. But so the second night I was like, I'm going for it. And I felt permission because I knew I wasn't there to seek the high or seek the feeling. And so I was like fully prepared to do 4 cups or whatever, you know, because the very first time I sat with ayahuasca, I had drank 4 cups, and it like absolutely changed my life. It was
wow.
so, you know, it was a journey to say the least. And so this time it was very much, I took the first cup, and within like minutes, I ended up purging and, you know, threw it up, and I was like, oh man, they don't offer a second cup for an hour. So I was like,
Oh,
you know, I was like, this isn't gonna do anything, you know, just whatever, but still being kind of ignorant, but also just like, it's okay. I'm happy to sit and like just fully meditate, relax into the space, see what happens. And then when they come around for a second cup, I'm just gonna get it, and then I'll keep going back to cups, you know, to get as far as I feel like I wanted to go. And so I just sat back and just kind of was in a pleasant space. And Easter, the horse that was, you know, beautiful, this beautiful horse that was happened to be in ceremony with us second night. She was in her stable. She wasn't just roaming around or anything, but I was right in front of her stall, and I was just thinking about Easter, and then thinking about all these things. And then I was kind of meditating, and then I was just internally just started singing to myself and like to like the universe. I was trying to sing to everything, you know, of just like, I've done that a couple times, but not as intentional as that was. It was just like, I felt like I really dropped into this meditation space of like singing to the everything, just because like I wasn't even singing spiritual songs. I was like, you know, I sang one, like my song Flowers in Hell. And then I, you know, cause that's like, oh, that's kind of spiritual. And then I was like, wait, I just released What That Means. I was like, you guys want to hear that? You know? So I just started singing, and I was like, I don't know how to describe it, but I was actually singing, but like under my breath kind of, and then trying not to distract anybody else, obviously. And as I was doing that, I was just like, it gave me so much joy. And then I felt myself start to fall into that medicine space. And I was just like, oh, wow, it's still happening, even though I purged immediately, you know? And so I was like, this is beautiful. And then while I was singing and just like falling in love with the meditative space I found, that's when it was like very early in my ceremony. That's when, you know, my demons, quote unquote, showed up. It was like all of a sudden this visual space of all these, like, I don't want to say people, but like a room of like all these people just kind of filled this space. And then it was like I said, their faces were kind of alarming, and they're like, weren't really bodies, but it was like these forms. And then it was like they were coming to listen to me sing. And then
mm,
it was like the first one kind of like reached down, like it was gonna like, I mean, like hug you, but like consume you, if that makes sense, you know, trying to like
mhm.
swallow you. And I was just like, I felt myself kind of pull back, and I was like, I'm not afraid. Like, I just wasn't scared. I was fascinated, and I was blown away that I was literally what I was writing about was happening. And I was just like able to look at them, and I was just like, I was blown away by how beautiful I thought they were in all of the, you know, kind of disfigurement and, you know, what might have been looked at as a little bit scary. I was just like, you're beautiful, you know, and like as loud as I was singing, I was shouting at them. I was just like, I love you. You're beautiful. And then it would like go. And then like these next ones, it was like one by one, they were just coming and like almost like moving each other out of line to like listen to me, look at them and say, you're beautiful. I love you. And I meant it with like everything in my soul. And it was just this absolutely profound experience. And I was just so blown away by what had just happened that's when I started laughing. I started laughing so uncontrollably, and like to the point where, you know, the other people in our ceremony were, you were there, but for the people who weren't there, even our facilitators, you know, our shamans that were there started laughing, you know, because it was just ended up being so contagious. And I was trying to kind of calm myself down, but at the same time, it's La Purga. That's another way of purging. And I was elated at what was happening. It felt like such a gift. Like I just kept saying, what a gift. Like, thank you for giving me the gift of every time I sing that song for the rest of my life, it's going to be the truest thing, you know, I've ever sung in some ways of like, this literally happened to me, you know? And then from there, it just went on to like the most intense medicine journey I've ever been on, even to the point to where I was like laying there at one point, just like starting to get scared about how high I was because I've done a lot of things. I've partaken in a lot of ceremonies, and this one was it was unlike any other. And they always are. None of them are ever the same. But as if you're looking at, you know, I keep calling it to myself of like, this was like the big one, you know, that I had been waiting for to a certain extent of, you know, try to get yourself in a mindset to where you're not always looking for like the medicine or something that's like external to find your way to God, to find your way to the source. But they are tools that help us so much. And so it's like, I don't want to be constantly reliant on only finding those deep moments with those tools. But it's like Ram Dass says, you know, you do the things until you find God in everything. You know, that's like when he stopped LSD and was just like, I don't need to do it anymore, basically, because like he already saw God in everything, you know. So it's like, yeah, it was incredibly profound. So and I feel like that's the way that I've been able to actually walk and like stay sober this time, is just like all of the things like that truly came out of me. You know, I was looking at my past stuff with, you know, my first cult and then my second cult, you know, and then it was just like mania. Like the first one was just like all this anger came up and all these things like, and that was the last thing. Like all these different things came up that I had, that I just knew immediately. It was like, it caused me pain and caused me anger. And immediately I knew like, oh, you have to say, I love you to this. You have to love it. That's the only way through. And so it was like at the end, I was dealing with a lot of teen mania things. And I was so angry. Like I was literally shouting at the leader. I was just like, you know, all of these expletives and whatever. And I like out loud in my muffled internal voice, I said, I hate you. And as soon as that came out of my mouth, immediately my whole body knew I had to love it. And I was just like, that was the hardest thing. And I said it at first and then immediately threw up because I was just like, it was like, you know, the medicine was like intuitively telling me like, you don't mean that. We got a lot more. And I didn't mean it. It took me multiple times through trying to say it until I finally broke down again and was just, it finally settled that I meant it. And then once I said it and meant it, Easter gave me a hoarse breath and I knew it was complete. So I don't even remember the full direction of where we were going with that. Talking about explaining the song, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of like self-flagellation. It's actually, it's funny because I have this course that teaches people how to get out of stress, right? And one of the modules addresses the inner critic. And when I made that course, it was like, I think my energy was about eradicating the inner critic. And I mean, that's how our self-flagellation kind of manifests. But then in the self-help space, we can do it there by trying to eradicate that inner critic. Like either way, you're whipping yourself for something that's going on. And and when you talked about in that song, shaking hands with your demons and loving them, I was like, okay. It came up in multiple different ways from multiple different people. Like, you're not eradicating any part of yourself. Like the inner critic's not going anywhere. It's part of you. It's you're living with it, and don't beat anything out of yourself, because that's something that I can do a lot of. Even addiction is a form of self-flagellation, right? Because it's
well, and then you get addicted to self-flagellation, so it's like
right. Yeah, you do. And actually Joe Dispenza talks about that in Becoming Supernatural, getting addicted to certain emotions and hormones, the hormones that they produce, thought loops and emotions, and then like they drive each other. And so you can get addicted and you can fuel yourself off. So something I've been working on was a cortisol addiction, like trying to break myself of that, because I can take myself into these really stressful states, these really fear-based states, because I've done so much of that.
Yeah.
And you don't really need to, right? It's just an addiction, at a certain point. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but the ceremony, really interesting how ayahuasca doesn't love or allow any kind of self-hate. I mean, it didn't for me, because that was largely the second night of ceremony for me, was just looking at that hard ceremony, because I had to go into different relationships and work through it with certain people, and it was just like that kind of darkness. It was just showing me that's a choice, and it's not the choice for you. So like, I'm going to make you sit with this for, it felt like hours, and it was torture. And just kind of like, how much do you want to punish yourself?
You did.
Yeah. Like, how long do you want to keep doing this? Does it feel good? If it doesn't feel good, don't do it. And we're taught, in life, that things should be hard and they shouldn't feel good. And a lot of things that do feel good are bad, because we're definitely going to become addicted to them, which, we don't have to. We don't have to become addicted to anything.
Right.
But yeah, that's a real rough one.
Yeah, that's it just makes me think too of something else I got in the first night of ceremony. It was a really tough one for me too, and it had been so long since I had sat with ayahuasca and in that particular medicine. It was like 8 years, and not for lack of trying. Not for lack of trying. It just like would never work out, and financially, I've just like never been in a spot to, struggling musician over here. I've like never really been in a spot to just like be able to drop cash and go to Costa Rica, or Peru, and where you really want to sit with these, true Shipibo shamans. And like every time you do it, you should absolutely, the main focus should be on who is guiding your ceremony. but so it had been so long that I remembered what it felt like, but also, had forgotten, because it had been so long. And then, but I, had, experienced other modalities and like understand what it's like to have, the quote unquote, the come on of like a psychedelic, like a DMT style experience of what happens in your body and like, that type of high, quote unquote. And the first night, it just was not happening. It was just not coming on. And I was just like getting angry. And I was like, I couldn't, that's all I care. All I was waiting for was the come on. And I was just like, it went further. And I like had taken the 1 cup and like waited the whole time and was able to keep it down and, was trying to meditate and stay there. And I was just like kind of getting anxious. And I was like, okay, where are you? You know, um, and then, there were a lot of different things that happened. And then I ended up finally taking the 2nd cup and then immediately threw it up. And then it was just like, I had the knowing, I was like, okay, this is not what we're doing here. Like, this is not what we're doing here. You did not come here to just get higher than you've ever been. It's like that happened the second night, but still it was like I just knew that. And then so I kind of gave into that, but I was like, 1 cup of this stuff is still just as powerful. Like, she gives you everything you need whenever you need it. That's what everybody says every time you do this stuff. And I was like, and I believe it. I believe in the power of the medicine. I believe in, all the power of God and source in the universe to like give me everything that I need in this moment. And so, but I was just angry. I was laying there and I was just like shouting in my tiny internal voice, like, where are you? Like, I was angry and I was like, where are you? Like, come on. Like almost like I was prodding her, like prodding Aya to just be like, like literally I was like, where the fuck are you? Like, how are you not showing up for me? And I was like, come on, I'm here. Like, bring it on, basically that type of thing. And then part of me was like, what are you doing? Like, how could you, like, are you crazy? Like, you can't be, because she'll answer you, so
right.
like, part of me was like terrified at my anger, but at the same time I couldn't control it. I was just like, where are you? As this external thing that was supposed to come in and like come into me from this way that it didn't already live within me. Does that make sense? It was like the way that I was looking at it from the exact lens that I used to look at Christianity, and the way that I used to look at God in that space. And it was always this thing of like looking at God as this external thing that was outside of me, that that I had to like go to and like, and then call on for that help, as if it wasn't, like just the full embodiment of like Holy Spirit, fullness of God that like lives within you. It was still like, even though I had that type of language or knowledge, it was still external to a certain degree. And so I was raging at ayahuasca as like in that lens of like, where are you? How are you not showing up for me? Like, how are you not showing up for me? Like, I showed up for you. I've been fasting, been doing these things, I'm like trying to figure out my life. I'm trying to do all these things, like works mentality, all of these things that are just so ingrained there in the back, from everything. And so it's just like, I was so angry and I was like shouting. And then it was like in one moment, it was like the sweetest, most peaceful feeling hit me. And then it was like this, like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was just this knowing of like that, she just showed up and was just like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Sounds like compassion.
Like, it was absolute compassion, absolute love. And what just dropped in, and it was like I almost audibly heard it. It was, it's always us. Like, and it was like, just absolutely completely melted me, took down all my defenses, all of my anger, all of my everything. And it was just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, it was like spirit was just like, it's always us. There is no, I'm outside of
Mm.
you and you have to like call out to me to like come find you. Like it's us together always, you know, it's never
Oh, that's
outside of
beautiful.
me. And it was just like the most profound thing ever. You know, it's just reminded me, even in like when I'm not using these modalities or, you know, plant medicine tools or anything, it's like it's us in the breath. It's us in the, you know, the finding the quiet space. And it's never, it's to access it, it's only inside of me already. I'm not reaching out for this external thing that's supposed to just show up and save me. It's
Yeah.
already inside of me, you know, and it's not a me and God is over here. It's like it's we. It's always us. And that's the only way to like move through anything, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. That first night, I kind of was having this really fun experience, and it was like seeing the geometry and the colors and this, and I'm just laying on my mat and I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm kind of on a roller coaster. This is actually fun. I didn't expect it to be fun. And then this thought came in like, wait, I'm supposed to be doing work.
Yeah.
And she was like, what?
Yeah.
And I was like, I I'm supposed to be doing, like, my ego came in and was like, I'm supposed to be doing work. When are we going to get to the work? Is this all play? And she was like, you're not here to work. No, you're not. And then she like took me down into some dark tunnel. She was like, you sure you want to do that? And I was like, no, no, no. And it was
I
like,
was joking, bring me
yeah.
back. Yeah.
And then I purged, and then I like was out of it, and I was like, oh God, okay, let's not do that. Like, keep the ego out of it. I'm just here for the ride. Lay down, calm down, let her show you what she wants to show you. And yeah, and so that second night she took me all the way down to that space where I think I need to work all the time and be so serious and be self-critical and be, you know, production all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, oh my God, why have I been living like this? Why did I think that that was how it was supposed to be? But I mean, I think a lot of us do think that.
Totally. We're taught
We,
that, you know,
we are.
especially in religious settings and, you know, especially extreme religious settings, you know, it's everything comes down to the work and you are, you know, like you are, it's total depravity from the second you're out of the womb. You know, you shoot out of that just this little sinful creature.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just like, your whole life is about, you know, adding this external source to like come in and like save you from all of the things that are just you know,
Right.
to a certain extent. And like I don't want to minimize that, or like I still kind of work through my thoughts when it comes to like literally comes to Jesus and whatnot. I got a song coming out about that too.
Oh, good.
But you know, because I still very much, you know, subscribe to teachings of Jesus. I'm very much, you know,
Yeah.
Jesus is still my dude. But there's just a different level of how I look at things like that, and like the Christ and like Christ consciousness and what that actually means to live that way and have that live within you. You know, like I said, as an always us experience rather than something external try that you have to grasp for, that is outside of you, that comes in like you have to just like clean up all of these things before you can actually see God.
Yeah. And that's not what Jesus taught at
Right.
all. That's what religions teach. And it's a slavery kind of mentality. Like, we're kind of taught to be slaves, to abhor ourselves enough that we won't put ourselves first.
Right.
That's how you breed a slave. They don't try to run away. They don't try to escape. They don't, question. They just live in fear and self-hate, and they stay, and they don't advocate for themselves. And it's kind of crazy how deep that is. And it's in the majority of us. The teaching us that we're bad is what creates the bad behavior.
Yeah.
Like,
it's so interesting
self-rejection.
Till I hear you talk about like that's how you build a slave. Because at Teen Mania, the first ministry that I was in, or I call it like ministry light, because it was fully a cult, at least in my of what I have come to at this point. And apologies to anybody who may listen to this who feels differently, that had their own experience. I love and respect everyone's experience that they had there. But I would also urge any of you to take a deeper look at what the hell happened to us there. But one of the like main taglines, it's like, it still runs in my head now, of like, it was like in like, we would do corporate exercises in the morning and different things like that. And like our very first, they call them LTEs, life transforming events, that we have these like weekend experiences. The very first one when you get there as an intern is called ESOL, Emotionally Stretching Opportunity of a Lifetime. And it's basically, it's just like a weekend of hell. It's based off of Navy SEAL training, like Navy SEAL boot camp, and like all of these things. Like, you truly wouldn't even believe me without seeing the video footage of like what we went through. And so like my was it my second year? I'm going to take too much time trying to figure that out. But it was my second year, because I stayed in my first year. I rolled my ankle like 6 hours in, and I was devastated, because this was like the thing everybody talks about. And it's like, you're so hardcore. And like, if you make it through ESOL without ringing the bell, like, it's just like this other elevation of like super Christian, you know what I mean? Or all of these things that like get tied into it. But I mean, you're talking about like all of the things of like building a slave. It's like sleep deprivation, no sleep cycles. If you fall asleep, you're dunking your head in cold ice water. Like, but you're in this auditorium after you've been running all day in the heat, and like eating cow tongue, and like having paintballs shot at you, and like rolling down these mountains and doing obstacle courses after obstacle courses. You're being sprayed with water constantly. You're going in and out of the river or this lake. You're going like, it's really intense, and you're like physically pushed to your absolute maximum capacity. And that's the point. The point is to break your ass.
Yeah.
So like, but in the spirit of their mind was the spirit of like pushing yourself farther than you think your body can ever go, relying on God to give you the strength to move forward. I agree with that thought, that principle. Sure. Obviously, I have been in, it's like, it translates into life. Sometimes your body fails on you. My body was completely in failure all summer. I'm only, I just started walking again this month, and after having it broken in May. And so my body was in failure, and it took a lot of mental and spiritual strength to keep going and not fall into some of the holes of depression that I could have gone much deeper into, or different things like that. Or like when you are running a marathon and you just have to have your body, like, let your mind and your will and your spirit take over. That's valuable. Absolutely. But to the level and to the extent, and with just the cruelty that they used. And it was like, one of the things that they used was, your leaders are the ones who are like your drill sergeants, basically. And they are the opposite of kind to you. So the people that you come there to that are supposed to like guide you through the year and be your source of like mentorship and comfort and all of these things, they're the ones that are basically like drilling you into the ground, shooting you with paintballs, not giving you rest, like telling you all these terrible things, trying to get a rise out of you to see how far they can push you. And it's like for lack of a better
Now
word,
that's my guide.
like the mind fuck of that is just so profound.
Yeah.
And so, but all of that to say, the like one of the main lines that they had there was like, beat your body and make it your slave. The amount of times that I have heard that line, like it runs like anytime anybody says something like that, the first thing that pops in my mind is beat your body, make it your slave. Beat your body, make it your slave.
Wow. And trust this person who's harming you and insulting you more than you trust your body.
Yeah.
And yourself.
And then when your own like intuition probably is screaming at you like, run away from these people. Get out of there. Get alert. You know, it's like that is what they're telling you is like, no, that's that's the devil in your ear. That's all the things that are like, all your family's gonna freak out and tell you you've joined a cult, but you haven't. They are just, unaware and not as spiritually, deep or woke as you are, like this whole thing. It's like they would constantly tell us like, now your family and your friends aren't going to understand you. And they're, it was like this separation of like, you might just have to walk away from these people and what are all these things. And it's just like, oh my gosh, all of the telltale signs of every single thing that like builds exactly what you're talking about was just all over this shit. But anywho.
Wow. That's pretty intense.
Yeah.
I heard somewhere, I can't remember where, but this frame about like addiction, because you mentioned like darker entities, right? It was said that that addiction can be a form of these darker entities that are trying to like pull on you and feed off of you. So they the way it was put to me was like it's people that have passed who had the addiction who are not ready to let go of it, and they don't have a body anymore, so they will like latch on to you and feed their addiction through your body. So
that's terrifying. Like it's like just a really messed up way of talking about generational trauma, or like what are we thinking here?
Yeah, I was curious how that was going to land in your body, because like it feels terrifying, right?
Yeah, man, and like I said earlier, it's hard, especially too in like something that is recorded like this and that will be forever exactly what we say in this moment in time. It's like, because I'm constantly learning how to live without those frameworks and without those, just teachings of that were really traumatic and really hard and really unnecessary. And to constantly work through what I actually believe now, and especially in the spiritual space, even in what's happening in the world and, like crises that are most likely imminent or things like that. It's just like, okay, well, I actually have come back full circle to kind of like believe some of the things that like eschatology and like the book of Revelation and like that Christianity actually talks about, but has kind of hijacked the concept of in certain ways, but when you expand your lens and understand that there are certain things that it's not just the Bible talks about some of these things, it's literally like from the beginning of like in Sanskrit to like every major and minor universal religion that is in existence still today, even down to cave paintings and, like the Hopi prophecy of like some of these like big themes that are talked about, excuse me, are like apocalyptic type of things, you know, are all talked about across the board. So, but it's like there's something in me that gets triggered by, I'm like, well, but Christians talk about that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't like, I don't ascribe to like so many things that are in this lane anymore, but it's like, but I don't want to be ignorant and like throw out what are still potential truths. Like, cause I think there is still a lot of truth to be had in the teachings of Christ and, you know, Christianity at large in its truest form. You know, but so that being said, when it comes to like demons sucking on you and, you know, darkness entities or light entities, I do believe that the world is built on duality, light and dark, the yin and the yang. You know what I mean? So it's like you cannot know love in its truest form without not having it, and not having it is you know, so there's so many forms of what the opposite of love is, you know. And so it's like you have to have one end and the other. And so as much as I believe in like spirit coming and helping me, you know, or like being activated within me to help me, but I do believe that there's probably tons of different dimensions. There's all these other things that are in these spaces that we don't touch in the 3D here. And so I have experienced them quite personally. So it's like, you know, some people want to talk to guides, what they'll call guides, or, you know, my like guardian angels, or, you know, different ancestors that you go back through, you know, and there's like so many different ways to pose those things, but they're looked at in these positive ways, and these, you know, beings of light and love, and that are just the exponential, you know, like messengers of God, if you will. And then so if those exist, there has to be the opposite end. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there is a reason why the story of Jesus had to have Satan. Like it has to exist. And so do I think that, you know, so I think that there is probably possibility and potential for, you know, these, you know, like dimensional interspiritual beings that do, you know, and I think that there is a way of light and there's a way of darkness. And I think that it more so has to do with your choice of, are you choosing to walk in light, or are you choosing to walk in darkness? Because I mean, I know that there is, I mean, you look, there's just so much, like I've studied on a lot of witchcraft things, and, you know, there are ways to do that very dark, you know, and there's a choice with that. And there's, you know, when it comes to drawing different sigils and calling on different specific demonic entities, you know, like that shit is real. I believe that it's real. It's like, you know, I've had different experiences on different trips out of the country. I've had different, you know, and I also know some people who, you know, practice witchcraft in different forms that seem to be on the light path. That's still very confusing to me. I don't know how that all, but I also look at one of the things, you know, in ceremony that hit me really hard again is like, I always look at the way that people live. How do you make me feel when I'm around you? And what are you, quite literally, your fruits of the spirit? Are they rotten, or are you literally living them out in, you know, love, joy, hope, peace, patience, kindness? Like the, you know, list goes on. Like, is that your fruit in your life? Because if that is your fruit, it literally, biblically, then that means that you know God.
Yeah.
And so whatever you're practicing, even though I might not understand it, if those are the fruits of your life, then who am I to say that what you're doing is wrong? Or like, if that's what connects you to God, or, you know, in whatever way that you want to look at source, like, do your thing. So I think that there is the opposite of that. And so it's like, there are sources of darkness too, you know, but it's like, but all of it is God. That's also the point. It's like Kyle always says this, Kyle Kingsbury, for anybody who's not just directly knows what I'm saying when I'm talking about Kyle in this, Rihanna and I, but it always says like, all is of or nothing is. All is of or nothing is. And so it's like, that has to be true. Like, if like everything has to be of God or nothing is of God, you know? So it's like, though even the choice for darkness in, you know, in that way, in like we're looking at it of like a calling in, you know, like possession in different ways of, you know, these other spirits. Like, I think that you can do that in a lightness and you can do that in darkness. So do I think that there are, all of that to say in a very long and large nutshell, I think that there is, I guess, possibility in that, but I think that I believe in generational trauma. I believe that trauma is stored within your DNA, and there's energy in that like gets passed along through everybody that goes down your bloodline, and it comes to a head. Like, that's why like we are so hard working on eradicating this stuff. Like, when you change your energy, when you purge this trauma out of you, like when your fascia is so tight and like there is memories stored within your skin and that releases from your body, that quite literally changes your DNA. Yeah. So you actually so then the generations actually start to change. Like, it's like when you heal, I heal type of thing. And so I think there is some truth to the fact of there could be, you know, that's why it's like, oh, addiction just runs in the family. Like, that's not just from, like, there's a spiritual aspect to that too, I think. It's not just, but because energy and trauma is stored within your DNA. If you don't work on that shit, it's in your DNA and you're going to pass it along. So, so there, I think it's more so that rather than you saying yes to or opening yourself up to some type of succubus demon.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was like framed in a way where like it was like you still have free will, but each time that you choose to consume whatever you're addicted to, you are just continuing to feed that kind of dark energy that is, and it's pulling harder.
I would agree with that. You know, I mean, and also like they call them spirits for a reason, probably, you know? Yeah. So it's like, and then when you look at the actual vibration of alcohol, it's like one of the lowest vibrating things like in the 3D space. So as far as when it comes to energy, so it's like, it is a depressant. It pulls you down. Like, you could be vibrating high up here and like meditating, connecting to source. And it's like, let me have my, you know, whatever it is, glass of whatever at the end of the night. It's like, you're bringing your internal like tuning fork vibrates at a certain, you know, speed or whatever. These are all, you know, theoretical visuals or whatever. But like, you're consuming something that quite literally is categorized as a depressant and literally will bring the vibration of your entire body down. So when your vibration is lower, you are open to more things that can affect you, that, you know, and different whatever
you're resonating with.
You're vibrating with low, like, and darkness and things like that are much more like lower vibrational entities, if you will, if you want to get really far into the, you know, woo side. But like, it's, you know, that's why people talk about like good vibes only, you know what I mean? Like in the hippie space, is like, because that shit's real. Like, the higher you keep your vibration, the cleaner your body is, the easier it is. Like, you think, like, when I fasted going into, you know, medicine spaces, it is like, it's night and day different than going in unfasted, even if you're on like a clean diet or whatever. But it's just like, the cleaner your tuning fork is, which is your body, like the more, like the higher vibration that is, like it's like your whole, all of your blood, everything, it's just vibrating at a higher pace because it's clean, that like you're then your, all of your, you know, chakras, energy spaces, all of those connection points are clear. So like when you go into a space, even a meditation, it's like the faster you launch into those spaces rather than being bogged down and having to like start from energy, your energy level being way down here, you know,
Yeah.
and like struggling with mass depression and, you know, bipolar 2, all these things that I've dealt with in my life, and addiction, and it's like constantly being wasted all the time. I'm and searching, like, I want to feel this way, I want to be spiritual this way, I want to be reaching out this way, I know cognitively all these things, but like all I'm doing every single day, all day long, is consuming depressant, lowering my vibration. And then when I'm trying to connect to the highest vibration there is, you have to, you know what I mean? Like you gotta, for anybody who is just listening to that, I was moving my hands back and forth and raising them up as if it was my vibration. Anybody who's seen the video knows what was happening, but that could have been a weird spot for anybody on audio. So, you know, it's just, those are just things that I just believe are, you know, so when you're trying to connect to things that are so high vibration, it takes more work. That's why the light path takes so much more work to, you know, work on yourself and like really get there. But like, you can sign on to the dark side anytime you want.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
It's like,
and it doesn't matter how high vibe you are. That one is always available.
It's always available.
And it doesn't seem to take as much energy to go back down.
No, no, and it will take you down fast, but then, and it also, how quickly you will change, and your body will look like you have aged in so many years, and your energy and all of the things about you then become consumed with the dark. So it's just, yeah, it has so much to do with those things, I think. And though I think that there are beings out there, or entities, whatever you want to call them, that are nefarious in some way, that do have intentions to fuck with you or take energy from you and like move it to people that are going to give them energy back and whatever, you know. It's just like, sometimes you can feel that in people sometimes too.
You can.
You ever met someone to where you're just like, oh my God, you are literally sucking the life out of me. And I'm not even trying to let you do that. It's just like interacting with you is quite literally damaging my soul. Like I feel like there is light leaving my body hanging out with your ass. You know what I mean? So it's like that, if that happens in people, how does that happen in people if there's not, if everything is in, you know, when you expand and look at it from like a spiritual plane. So who knows? But
yeah. Well, and then we have, you know, as you said, it's all God, and we like to label things and make judgments about them. And there's like this spectrum of light and dark, but it's all necessary, and it's all part of life, and death is part of life. And and another frame that I heard around it was that, you know, the darker entities would just be very fearful because they are vibrating so low that they're pulling away from source, and so it's like wandering around in the dark. Like you're just very, if you think about, if you were wandering around in the woods in the dark, every sound you heard, you'd be frightened and you'd be lashing out at. So that's kind of, you know, it's a fear thing, and it's a not necessarily like I want to kill you and I'm evil, but more like I'm afraid, like I'm not okay, and lashing out and sucking the life wherever they can get it. Like if you see some light, you're going to go toward it and try to take it, right? And try to possess it because you feel so in the dark. So that's an interesting way of looking at it too.
And I think
it's all.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. No, it's so interesting because like not really until you were just explaining that, I didn't really put it together, but like as far as when it comes to like vibrating high, or like being on, like connected to the highest vibe of source, you know, of like after we did ayahuasca that last time, you know, I went to walk by myself to take my purge bucket out to the space, you know, to bless it and, you know, say I love you to it all one more time, and then, you know, you leave it in the well and or the ditch, whatever it was. But I was walking, you know, and it was dark, and you know, it's not really it was really only like lit up kind of by the moon, and there's like some lights on, you know, on the path where we were at. And I remember walking, and like normally that would be a thing for me to where I'm like, like it's a little like when I was younger, I would had a really hard time with the dark. Like I would see stuff, and like I would literally like run from my bedroom to the bathroom to like flip the lights on as quickly as I could,
Yeah.
you know, in the middle of the night. Cause I'm just like, and if I looked into the living room, it was just going to be like looking into the depths of hell, you know?
Yeah.
So, but it was like, I was walking. And so it was like I said, I was fasted, sober, you know, going into it. And like, and then not to mention the medicine is like one of the incredibly high vibration thing that you can take into your body. And then the release of all that trauma, the purge of all that energy that was trapped in the pit of my stomach and all throughout my body, like releasing all of those things that I have been waiting for something to like knock these energy pieces loose that I, you know, is so desperately needed out of my body. Walking to take that bucket, it was like for a split second, it was like something in the back, or like my old pattern was like, oh, like you should be scared walking through the forest at night, you know. But immediately I was like, I'm not scared of a fucking thing right now. Like I wasn't afraid of anything. It was like everything was all is of or nothing is. And I felt so locked in with the beauty of the everything and like vibing with that so much that it was just like, I am not afraid. What do I have to be afraid of? You know, like even if anything, if a wild, you know, like we were in wherever we were, if a wild animal had come out and just immediately got me by the throat and that was it, you know, like that would be devastating and very sad and incredibly dramatic for all of y'all to come and find me like that. But even still, it was like, well, then I went out in the highest way that I possibly could have. And I'm like just folding back into the beauty of everything that I came from. And so like there's I think it was listening to Ram Dass in I forget which teaching series it was, but he was talking about an Aikido master, I think, if I'm saying that right. But basically it was just like they're talking about like getting to the point of where you can't, like getting to the point of where nobody can take from you. There is nothing that anyone can take from you. You know what I mean? Because you're like so solid in your belief and your knowing and your relationship with spirit. It's like nobody can take away from you. And so you're not afraid of losing. You're not afraid of dying. You're not afraid of being hurt, because you know that there's a process of that you'll learn from that and that you will grow somehow. You know, all of these things. It's just like, even I had a small mushroom experience at the beginning of over Labor Day weekend, and I was like looking in the sky, and I saw like there was it was like clear as day outlined, almost that someone had drawn it. There was this snake that I saw in the clouds, and at first it was like, oh, and like I've seen a lot of snake energy, and sometimes it's way too overwhelming and intense, and or like pushing like a bad trip side. But like I looked at it, and it was like immediately that first impulse is like, oh, snake, whatever. But I was just like, hey, buddy, I'm not afraid. you know, I was like, I'm not afraid of you. What do I have to be afraid of you for? You know? And then it
Yeah.
was just like, it just hung out in the sky. Like because it was kind of like coiling up, like it was gonna, you know, like a 3D movie, like swoop into your vision like that, you know? And I was just like, hey, buddy, you know, like, I love you. Like, you're beautiful. I love you. And then it just like stayed up there and was like, cool. I see you
Yeah.
too, you know, and then it was just like this knowledge of respect and like understanding and like, so yeah, so the cleaner you keep your tuning fork, if you will, of your body, like just the easier it is to access these things and the easier it is to like live in the space of knowing that it's all good. Everything is okay, you know, like no matter what happens, like sometimes things just happen. And that's like the lesson of chaos, you know, and like it's just, yeah, learning how to become more of yourself through these things, you know. It's like if we would just have the audacity to live 100% us, and then like it's always us, because you're never without it. It's not like God is not separate from you. It is always us. Like if we have the audacity to live that way, like what are the possibilities, you know?
Exactly. When you're not living in shame and you're turning around and or fear, you're facing whatever is scaring you and acknowledging it and, you know, looking it in the eye, everything can feel much safer, much, you know, you don't have to be afraid. It's like when a bully is coming after you, you don't run, you turn around and you say, hey, I see you.
I see you, man.
You're not scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So seeing ourselves and all the parts of ourselves, you know, there's nothing to run away and hide from and feel so ashamed of.
Yeah. You can't run from yourself. Like that's one of the like the chorus is like of that song we were talking about at the beginning. It's like,
do you want to sing it? You don't have to if you don't feel like it.
I can.
Yeah.
Hold on. To be truthful, I don't have any pants on. So if I stand up to go get my guitar, that's not going to be good for anybody. Hopefully it'll be out soon.
Yeah. Have you recorded it yet?
Not yet, but I've got another song that I'm finishing up that's almost done. It's called Don't Pray For Me, actually. In parentheses, not in that way. But yeah, so I think it'll probably be one of the next ones. I'm gonna really work on getting a full album out this next year, so 2024, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Awesome.
And if anybody wants to send me some money to help me do that, please do.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive. I mean, my producer, it's $900 per song. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And then that's not. Did you have to send it out for? Did he mix it as well, or you have to send that to mix and master? And he did the whole thing.
No, he did all the music and mixed and mastered it, and I just sent him the vocal. I sent him the vocal with the melody, and then he puts music to it and does all the editing and everything, and
that's awesome.
And has me just record a solid vocal with the music that he sends. Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, he's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's expensive for each song. It's, you know, $1,000 pretty much.
Oh, for sure. And then that's like awesome that he can do all those things in house. Most of the time it's like you have to pay for your producer and then you have to send it out for mix. And then the mixing engineer isn't always the one who ends up mastering it too. So it's like you can look at 3 different avenues of when you're getting it, you know, like in these different commercial spaces. It's like you're looking at like $2,500 to $3,000 if you can, and that's even on like a lower like kind of. Well, I mean, if you look at like what labels do and whatnot, it's like there you can look at like $10,000 to $25,000 for one song. So it's just absurd. I have no desire to be doing that. But
Yeah.
like, I would like to stay. I like, look, give me your guys' number. I would love to be able to stay around 1,000 a song. Like, you know, that's
Yeah.
everything done. That's still hella expensive in the grand scheme of things, but that's fantastic. I'm super happy for you.
Yeah. I will give you his information.
Heck yeah.
All right. So good to see you.
Me
Thank you
too.
for the conversation.
Yeah, and congratulations on your song. I can't wait to hear so many more.
Thank you. Yeah.
You gotta put your song in at the end of this too, or even before mine.
Oh, yeah. I could do that.
Oh yeah. Get yourself out there, girl. It's great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were going to talk about that. Well, next time.
I'm a yapper.
Yeah. Me too. Okay. I'll see you soon. Couple weeks.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, me either. It's going to be awesome.
It's good to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.